John, good afternoon, I think. Evening time for me. And we've just been learning that it's extremely early in the morning for Joe. And the sharp-eyed will notice that might not be Joe's best time of the day. However, Joe's in the US, so it's kind of the only time we could figure out how to connect. And it's long overdue. The last time we spoke was pre-Redlands. A fair bit has happened since then, and don't expect you to relive all of it, but like three best things, three worst things.
Three best things. That's a cracking start. Number one is always going to be winning the time trial, stage one. Like, I've had a target on that race for 11 months and 29 days since the last time I did the race. So it's nice to finally win that. Second best thing was probably the rest of that week, wearing yellow and everything which happened at Redlands. Um, and then from there, we've just finished, or I'm up in Utah now after Unbound, and the Unbound block and the prep there was an awful lot of fun. Um, Three worst things. Unbound continues to be a thorn in my side. Um, then I got sick after Redlands, which kind of sucked, and I'm still kind of dealing with this acid reflux thing, which is just a reminder that you can do all the planning in the world, but as an athlete, there's a lot more going on than just training and prepping, and you need many different parts of the puzzle to be working. So I'm going to leave it at those two for the worst things. But no, Redlands was an absolute week, so we probably start there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so this time around, I was actually guest riding because the complication with road means you can't ride for yourself. You have to find a team. So I found a group of guys called Good Guys Racing out of New York City. I first spoke to them in October, and I was like, "Hey, I want to win the time trial and then win GC. That's the goal of my week. Would love to do it with you." Kept true to my word. Did an awful lot of prep for the TT. Still far from perfect, but we got there 4 or 5 days early. I rode the course more than anyone. And then ultimately, I won by 8 or 9 seconds, which it was a really funny feeling after I won. Like, I rode back into the car park by the lake, and they were all buzzing because they don't win races like that very often. And I was like, dejected is the wrong word, but it was like relieved rather than excited, if that makes sense. Which was a really interesting emotion to deal with because usually when I win, it's excitement and everything that goes with it. But this was just pure job done. That's step one. Let's go step two and try win GC. Um, which it's a shame, but it's just how my brain works, especially in stage racing. GC didn't go to plan. I didn't win yellow, and I kind of I ended up throwing Hail Mary on the last day, which went badly. It was going perfectly well, and I mean, having finished the year before, I didn't really care about racing for second or third. It was all or nothing. Um, didn't work this year. That'll be next year.
Why do you think you felt different about, after the time trial? Right.
I don't know, and I've thought about it a lot. I think it's because I knew I was the best rider there for the time trial. So anything other than a win would have been a failure in my eyes. That was the
Mhm.
stage which I'd earmarked, and it was my stage. Everyone had told me I was favourite as well. Um, yeah, there was no way if I didn't win that, it might have set me up better for the rest of the week. But goal one was always win that time trial, and once I did, it was like, yeah, of course you did, Joe. This is what you've been prepping for 2 weeks or 6 months, whatever, however long. Um, so yeah, it still felt good, don't get me wrong. And wearing yellow the next day was very, very good because I don't get to do that very often anymore. But yeah, it was interesting. I think it's a feeling which a lot go through. Just there's a degree. Obviously, you are happy, but it is more. Oh, thank God I got that box ticked.
I've certainly heard that from other people in the past. This idea of, no, I know I've done all the prep to be able to win it. The outside world, everybody's telling me I'm going to win it. So, like, the only results I can have from this are to lose rather than any chance to win. Because yeah, coming first is just achieving what everybody knows is going to happen anyway. That must be quite a kind of tough thing, especially in a random sport like bike racing.
And there's like 180 guys on the start line, and it's very rare. I mean, actually, the week after I was in Texas. No, sorry, the week before I was in Texas, and it was very similar. I was going to defend my rattlesnake gravel result, and anything other than a win would have been a failure. Um, and that had a similar feeling, actually. It was less excitement, more just like, oh, thankfully I've defended the title. Like, the only thing you can do after winning the year before is win again, otherwise it's a failure. And Redlands, I think I put so much pressure on myself to win that it was just oh, save face. I did it. I can still time trial. That's what I've been good at since I was 17. Now let's figure out how to win this yellow jersey, which it was exciting and I have missed it. But it's a shame I can't kind of that every win isn't the same excitement level, but it's also different in a TT. Like in a road race, you have the sudden burst of emotion, like as you cross the line first. In a TT, you kind of like I crossed the line a few seconds ahead, and then like slowly every minute someone comes past and you realize you're faster. So it's like a slow burn excitement rather than that sudden burst of energy.
Um, I'm curious. So, if your reaction had been different, having won the time trial, um, or let's say that you didn't win the time trial, then your reaction would have been very different. Like, what bearing do you think that might have had on the subsequent race days? So, you won it, and that definitely informs your how you made decisions about racing in the subsequent days. If you'd lost, would you have been more conservative, or would it have changed in any way?
I'd have raced differently on stage two because I was racing slightly defensively rather than attackingly. Um, at the end of the day, that didn't have a major impact on me wearing yellow. But I think because I was riding so well when I won, and then I was riding so well in yellow, I then kind of became the marked man, which, for better or worse, like I was kind of seen as the strongest or second strongest climber in the race. So I think if I hadn't have won the time trial, I'd have been attacking on stage two, which I'd still have been seen as the strongest, but you're not the strongest in yellow, which makes a very big difference. Would it have changed anything? Who knows? Would I personally change like the result? No. Like if anything, I'm just like right next year we win the time trial, then win stage two, then win yellow. It's like my whole thing by the end of Redlands is I'm gonna have to win every stage and GC, I think, to be happy. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if it might like it. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like win or lose the time trial, you'd have gone, you'd been going for it anyway in GC. And I just wonder, like having won the time trial, like I wonder, like how much reflection happened to say, right, that's great. Now, what could go wrong tomorrow in stage two?
Yeah, it was interesting. The team I was with wasn't that strong on a mountaintop finish. So there was a lot of that, oh, what can we do to get me out of this situation when I'm going to be isolated? But yeah, there was a discussion before the TT that I'm all in to win, but it's probably not the best position for the rest of the week. But I'm not going to purposely pedal a little bit softer in time trial. Like that'd be so dumb. Um, but no, when I think back, it's like the only thing which I would have changed is having one more climber on the team to help me when it did hit the fen, like midway through stage two. Apart from that, not much I'd have changed, to be honest with you. The Unbound block, which is a very high point, which ends with a low point because Unbound is becoming my bogey race. Um, but this year I decided to kind of take a step back, not over race myself going into the biggest dance of the year and just prep, which was so nice to be at home, have a mid-season training block, and kind of get ready for the big one in Kansas, expecting or not expecting, you know, it's always going to go, something's going to go wrong on your day in Kansas, but give yourself the best opportunity, or give myself the best opportunity to be racing come Unbound. And that was like a month of prep, which in hindsight, now we know the result and what happened. It's like, it's again, different feelings about it, but I wouldn't have changed it. And I'm coming to the conclusion that Unbound, you can race it 15 times in your life and maybe you have one or two good ones. And that's not the same. That's not just for me. That's for everyone in the peloton. I think two guys had a good day this year, and that was first and second place. Everyone else I've spoken to was either miserable or had something go wrong. So I I don't think there's any way of prepping for that race properly, without accepting that a big part of it goes to luck or Mother Nature or whatever.
And what was different about the winners? Like how did they like manage to avoid that sort of? What do they do differently in their preparation, their training?
I think that's the $1 million question, and it doesn't, by the looks of it, their training looks very similar to the rest of us. Like the guy who won, very similar hours, very similar heat training. Second place, he lives somewhere hot, so it's like you can argue he's kind of predisposed to it, but I do think there's a degree of does it go perfect on the day? And it's hard to have a perfect race. And it's kind of like you can compare it to a Paris-Roubaix that you can be the strongest rider there. That doesn't mean you win it. And from what I've looked back on and what I've reflected on, Cam, the guy who won, he rode a tactically perfect race and had the physicality to back it up. But it doesn't really look like anyone else on the start sheet rode tactically perfect or had the physicality. It was like he was the chosen one that day, and everyone else was a level behind him, which I suppose is just sport, isn't it?
But he was one of your kind of picks before
Mm.
the race. So what was it about what you kind of knew about his prep or something else that led you to believe that he would, you know, with a clean race, that he'd be able to deliver that perfect execution?
Like racehorses. It's like racehorses, John. It's like Joe had looked at the shape of his calves and thought, oh, he's in good form.
I'd gone for the classic, oh, is due a big win, and then made my call off that one. No, I've raced him a lot, and you kind of know when someone's going good. And my other call, Matt Beers, who was a much safer bet, he punctured 3 times, I think. So yeah, it's you look good when your prediction does come true, even though it's not yourself. But I think that was as much black magic as it was anything else.
Yeah, it's making me think about high altitude mountaineering. And you just don't know how somebody's going to go. They can be the greatest performer, then they go to the Himalayas and they're just rubbish. They just don't acclimatize. And then there's been famous examples of people who are, spent more time training in the pub than on the hill, and they rock up in the Himalayas, and they're just somehow it's just built for it. And it's not immediately obvious from a physiological sort of point of view. But some people can operate and some people can't. And it's not always consistent in time. You go back for an expedition, same place the following year, and it'll turn out that no, you can't operate. You were fine last year, but this year you're just not acclimatizing. So seems like that, something like that going on. It's quite interesting.
It reminded me of everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And Unbound, you just get punched in the face all day long. And we all have all the plans. Like everyone over plans Unbound, you can argue. And the more I think about it, ironically, the more I think it's better not to plan because
Yeah.
then there's less going on. You just race. And if your race goes good, it goes good. If your race goes bad, well, you could have done all the planning in the world and it probably would have gone bad anyway. And one of my favorite kind of quotes of the weekend was from Alexi, my teammate, and he just goes, "Yep, I did a bike race. I finished somewhere doing something in some place," and then just walked away. So I was like, "Yep, I felt that one."
Yeah. So yeah, interesting. I mean, like the whole thing about performance and outcome are like separate, right? Like I'm sure you're proud of your performance at Unbound. Like the
Yes,
outcome is nothing to write home about, but you're proud of your performance, and that's the most important thing. However, when I hear people talk about Unbound, there's a certain fatalism that starts to creep in, and so I think that that mentality around performance, not outcome, is good. But if we push it too far, it becomes somewhat fatalistic, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I was here, got my bike, rode, came somewhere, like whatever. You know, it's not.
I
I'm not in control at all.
I
I
think
think
everyone
that
wants to
like we
forget about
might
it.
need to, yeah, might need to guard against that because clearly you are in control. Like separating performance from outcome doesn't mean we can be just fatalistic about things. It's like,
I
well, it's the gods smile on you or they don't.
It was
Um,
interesting this year. I had a better performance than the other 2 years I've done it, and I think that's why I was more frustrated at the finish line with the result. Like I had the best performance I've ever had, but that made me angrier at the poor result because I was like, well, there's nothing to blame it on. It was just something happened. And that was kind of the consensus around the whole peloton, which is always going to be like that. You're going to have one or two guys overperforming, um, but it is just brutal. Like our whole season is dedicated around 5 hour races, then we race for 9. And it's quite a shock to the system. And yeah, this was the first year I crossed the line. And I was like, I'm not coming back. And I will because I kind of have to. And it is a great week, but it's such a bloody grim race. Like there's even now, 2 weeks after it, there's nothing enjoyable about the actual race. Like you get to, because you're going into deep, deep, deep Kansas and you know something's going to happen. Whether that's, you just know it's coming because you've got 9.5 hours, you've got two bike races in one day effectively. And I imagine Cam, who won, even he had a moment where it was like, oh, something's happening. And I think I got to about hour 7. I was like, oh, I'm still 50 miles from home. And I've been on the bike for 7 hours, and it's a very different mental place you go to in that last 3 hours versus every other race of the year.
hmm. um, yeah. But you're an elite athlete, Joe. So there were some poor people at the back of the field who would probably be 6, 7 hours on a sportif, right?
I did
That would
think
be their
that.
normal. Their normal bike races are probably 6, 7, 8 hours long because they're not elite athletes, they're just out. And they somehow like they don't get sidetracked by, oh, being out here for 8 hours, something's going to happen. So I'm curious about that. It's like in terms of mental preparation, does it help to think that or not? But the thing I really want to ask you was, do you need to blame somebody for a bad result?
No, I think you inevitably always blame yourself. You
But that's
don't.
blaming somebody.
Yeah,
Does anybody need to be blamed for a bad result? A bad performance, like, yeah, somebody should take responsibility for it. But a bad result, does somebody need to be blamed? Just is, isn't it?
probably no, but that doesn't stop it happening.
Yeah, but yeah, so maybe we should be a bit more zen about the outcomes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I love
Um,
events like that that just expose this like psychological sort of frailties that we all have. Um,
yeah, and there's something very different as well versus doing what I did, which was 9.5 hours, and the XL, which was I think the winner did that in 18 hours. And again, a very different style of race. That it's just, I think goal one of the XL is finish, goal two is race in a weird way, whereas goal one of the Unbound is always result. And there's some point of a day that you see the result going, you're like, okay, the goal now is just to finish, and you are happy. It's the one race a year I'm happy to cross the line at, like no matter the position. But that doesn't change the fact that you still want the good result.
Mm. I think that weekend warriors should possibly learn something from elite athletes about how they physically prepare. But I think elite athletes could learn something from weekend warriors because weekend warriors don't enter races focused on winning. They're just there to perform, to have an experience to the best of their sort of capability. And I think there's something quite pure in that. And they're like, and I did a few sort of running events a long time ago, and I had no illusions. I was not going to be winning anything, but that freed me to just enjoy the experience, and I probably got more out of myself because of that. It's quite interesting.
I
Mm.
think finally on this kind of the other thing is when you're racing in the front, you always are going over your limit maybe earlier than you should do because you're obviously following the front of the race and following attacks and trying to get ahead. And it kind of means you fly a lot closer to the sun than you hypothetically would if you were just trying to have a good performance over 9.5 hours is very good to a good race result. And
Yeah,
to have a good performance for 9.5 hours, you've arguably got to make mistakes in the first part.
yeah,
Um, like they're two very different ways of racing. And there was one point I remember turning to a guy at maybe an hour in and like I said to him, we're racing as if it's the last 2 hours and we've got 8.5 to go. And he just shrugs and is like, welcome back to Unbound. And I think if I was just riding Unbound from A to B as fast as possible, it'd be a very different style to, I mean,
yeah,
hour 6, I was like, wow, I am on my hands and my knees. And now I just need to get home as fast as possible. Whereas the perfect pacing would be faster second half and negative splitting. You're never going to negative split Unbound because you follow the race until you don't,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. Epic, epic.